Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. Once again, coming to you live from South Korea, here on the border of North Korea, site of the president's recent and historic meeting at the DMZ with the North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un. We'll have more on the aftermath of that meeting for you in just a minute. But first tonight, the Democratic Party is a diverse coalition. They themselves tell you that relentlessly. But diversity does not mean that Democrats are united. No. Increasingly, it means a party defined by identity politics. And by definition, that means conflict. In the Democratic Party, skin color matters above all. Some colors are good, some colors are bad. Your worth as a person depends upon what you look like. Watch.
In my opinion, we don't need white people leading the Democratic Party right now. The Democratic Party is diverse, and it should be reflected as so in our leadership and throughout the staff at the highest levels.
I will point out, though, another white male. I'm very suspect of that this year going into a Democratic primary with women doing well in the African-American base of the Democratic Party. I'm not sure it's the time to dominate a white man.
Joe Biden understands that this modern Democratic Party is going to sit back and say, really? We want a 76-year-old white man?
It's all propaganda. America is not a racist country. America elected Barack Obama twice. Overwhelmingly, and look at the numbers, Americans believe our national identity is not defined by skin color, thank God. Americans believe that people deserve equal opportunity and equal treatment regardless of what they look like. And the old Democratic Party for decades claimed to believe all of that too, but no longer. In the new Democratic Party, race means everything. During last week's Democratic debates, each candidate on the stage took a turn denouncing this country as immoral and bigoted. Pete Buttigieg is the mayor of South Bend, Indiana. He knows that police in his city are doing their best to keep citizens safe. But saying that won't get him the Democratic nomination. And so on Thursday, Buttigieg attacked his own police department and his own city as racist. Watch this.
This is an issue that is facing our community and so many communities around the country. And until we move policing out from the shadow of systemic racism, whatever this particular incident teaches us, we will be left with the bigger problem of the fact that there's a wall of mistrust put up one racist act at a time, not just from what's happened in the past, but from what's happening around the country in the present.
He offered no evidence to support anything. He said, what a demagogue. He'll say anything. They all will. And so it went. When they weren't promising to give America's wealth to the rest of the world, Democrats attacked each other as bigots. Senator Kamala Harris clearly thinks she can become president of the United States by calling other people racist. And she began with Joe Biden.
I'm going to now direct this at Vice President Biden. I do not believe you are a racist, but you also worked with them to oppose busing. And, you know, there was a little girl in California who was part of the second class to integrate her public schools. And she was bused to school every day. And that little girl was me.
Oh, barf. So Kamala Harris is saying that if you oppose busing, which is an insane and destructive policy that most black people say they hate because it hurts them, if you oppose that, Kamala Harris is telling us, you're a racist. Over on MSNBC, the guiltiest anchor on television cringed with self-loathing watching this. What a good person you are, he said to Harris. You have every right to hate people like me for our skin color. Yes, you do.
And this is really important to people of all backgrounds and ethnicities. I don't like the word race, ethnicities.
Right.
How did you come out of that and not have hatred towards white people generally?
Oh, how destructive is this? This really is the modern Democratic Party. All race, all the time. Americans don't want that. There's no evidence they want that. Americans are not racially obsessed, unlike the buffoons you see running for office and hosting cable news shows. Americans care about jobs and security and fairness. The press, meanwhile, insists on pitting black against white, Kamala Harris versus Joe Biden. But the reality, real life, is far more complicated than that. For example, and this is just one of many examples, Joe Biden's strongest constituency, black voters. Kamala Harris's base, meanwhile, young, well-educated white liberals, affluent white voters. In fact, many black voters appear skeptical of Kamala Harris. One of them recently tweeted that Harris's life story doesn't bear much resemblance to that of most African Americans. Her parents were from India and Jamaica. Donald Trump Jr. retweeted that observation. And for that, CNN denounced him as a terrifying racist.
Don Jr. is facing big backlash for retweeting a racist posting questioning Kamala Harris's race.
Donald Trump Jr. retweeted a post, which is a racist lie.
This is a constant recurring theme with the president. Inferential racism, implied racism. Oh, no, I'm not a racist. I don't have a racist bone in my body, but those muscles are awful bigoted.
The strategy that, frankly, Republicans have used since the beginning of time, which is divide and conquer on race.
It is a horrible form of black racism that has now been harnessed to be a voter suppression tool.
This is an attempt to divide the black community and attack a black candidate, not on policy reasons, but on xenophobia and racism.
Pure propaganda. Did you hear that idiotic CNN report? It's a racist lie. Well, it turns out that no less an authority than Don Lemon, also of CNN, said virtually exactly the same thing just a few months ago. Now, this tape has been floating around Washington, and Don Lemon apparently has been calling other anchors, even on other channels, and asking them not to replay it because he's embarrassed of it. But we think you have a right to see it, and you can decide for yourself if Don Lemon is also an anti-black racist. Watch.
The people who are saying, is she black enough, that's bull, that's BS. But to want a distinction to say, is she African American, or is she black, or is she whatever? There is nothing wrong with that. All she had to do was say, I am black, but I'm not African American. That's it.
When she goes down her lineage, many Africans landed in Jamaica and all these other Caribbean islands. So she could indeed
Jamaica's
be
not America.
African American mixed with other races. But she is
Jamaica's not America.
But she is a black woman. She was born
did not
here.
Come out of Jim Crow.
Okay, well, let's go into Ted Cruz.
My gosh, this is all so tiresome, such a total distraction from things that actually matter, like jobs and life expectancy of Americans and the suicide rate, et cetera. There's a long list. But still, here's Don Lemon telling you that Kamala Harris is not an African American. He thinks it's important that you know that. And yet that's not racist because Don Lemon is a Democratic voter. That's the logic of identity politics. Democrats think they're going to get elected on that. They don't seem to understand that the rest of the country finds it boring and stupid and repugnant. Rob Smith is a contributor at Turning Point USA, and he joins us tonight. Rob, thanks a lot for coming on. So what do you make of this debate? I mean, it's obviously the ugliest possible and dumbest possible debate. Does it get you anywhere? Does it get, all the Democrats have decided Don Jr.'s a racist because he retweeted somebody else's tweet that agrees with Don Lemon. What do we get out of this conversation?
We get absolutely nothing out of it. Black Americans certainly don't get anything out of it. Let me tell you something about the whole Donald Trump Jr. is a racist conversation. How is Donald Trump Jr. a racist for sharing a same conversation that Don Lemon had on CNN? The exact same conversation. And so what is going on in the left right now is they're trying to twist any sort of question about Kamala Harris's lineage or where she came from into some sort of birther-style attack, which I think is garbage. Kamala Harris is the child of a Jamaican father and an Indian mother. Now, she was born in America to two immigrant parents. She's a black American. She's not exactly African American, right? And what she does when you see the situation that she had with Joe Biden at the last debate is she tries to muddy the waters. When she says that she's a child of busing, she tries to muddy the waters to pretend as if she comes from the Jim Crow lineage or the lineage of slaves, which she does not come from. That's the conversation that people are having. It was not racist when Don Lemon had it on CNN. It's not racist for me or other black voters to have it. And it certainly wasn't racist for Donald Trump Jr. to ask the question. I think that idea is completely absurd.
It is completely absurd. But Kamala Harris is the one who injected this conversation, imposed it on the rest of the country. Am I wrong for not caring at all who Kamala Harris's parents are? She didn't choose her parents. Talk about irrelevant. I care about what she's done.
Absolutely. You're not wrong for not caring at all. The reason that she has injected this conversation, the reason that Democrats have come so hard, to her defense, and the reason they're trying to smear Donald Trump Jr. and other conservatives as racist is because they have absolutely zero ideas for black Americans or any Americans for that matter. Also, Kamala Harris was polling very low, consistently low low among African Americans. There is some sort of that she just was not connecting with African American voters. Surprise, surprise. After this shameless stunt with Joe Biden last week, she's polling a little bit higher now. So mission accomplished. The stunt was shameless. The stunt was calculated almost to the point that they were selling merchandise connected to this stunt hours after it happened. So they run on race, they run on division, they run on all of these things because they don't have any ideas for the American people other than selling our entire country away to illegal immigrants. When you talk about free health care for illegal immigrants, when they talk about the borders being concentration camps, complete garbage, and most Americans look past it. The problem with the Democrats and the issue that they're having right now is that they need 85 to 90% of black voters. Black voters are making a turn to the right. They're seeing record low unemployment under the president. They're seeing the president having signed the First Step Act. They're seeing actual tangible results in their lives under a Republican administration, and Democrats have no other thing to offer them besides fear and handouts. Now, we've seen this before, and we're going to be seeing it a lot over the next year and a half.
If you like what Democrats did for Gary, Indiana, you'll be happy to have them run our country.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think it.
Rob, great to see you tonight.
All right. Thank you very much.
Pete Buttigieg has become the favorite candidate of Wall Street, not surprisingly, the McKinsey veteran. But he's facing trouble in his very own city. Buttigieg is being denounced by locals after a police officer shot and killed an African-American man who the police say was coming at him with a knife. Locals say Buttigieg cares more about the presidency than the city he supposedly runs.
Sure. So,
if everyone can just, we're going to allow him to speak if everyone can just calm down.
I would love to be able to finish. My reply, if that's okay.
Well, a few minutes ago, we showed you Buttigieg's solution to the heckling. He suggested that his own police department is packed with racists. Well, Harvey Mills is the president of the South Bend Fraternal Order of Police. We thought it was worth getting the other side. He joins us tonight. Mr. Mills, thank you very much for coming on. So is the department, as your mayor says, packed with racists?
Absolutely not. This incident is nothing to do with race. This incident is about an officer that was forced to defend himself against a dangerous felon who used an 8-inch hunting knife to attack him. That's all this incident is about. It has nothing to do with skin color.
So what does it do to see your reckless slimeball mayor impugn the moral character of cops without offering any evidence at all, just dismissing them out of hand as racist because he thinks it gives him a political advantage? What does it do to your average police officer in South Bend to see something like that?
It's very demoralizing, Tucker. You know, he used the term systemic racism. Apparently, maybe he doesn't understand the definition of systemic. We do. And that means all. He's basically called all police officers racist, and that is blatantly untrue.
Well, does he have evidence of that? I mean, you would think this is a guy who went to Harvard somehow. He's supposedly very smart and very thoughtful, and he's deeply moral. He's always telling us that. Does he have actual evidence that there is something called systemic racism in the department, or is he just saying that?
I believe he's just saying it. I have not heard any of that. Tucker, there's no indication that there is systemic racism within our police department. That's ridiculous.
So who'd want to become a cop? If your own mayor is attacking you on national television, attacking not simply what you do, but who you are as a man, your character, who'd want the job? Do you get paid enough to want to put up with crap like that?
I've served my whole life, first in the Navy and now as a police officer. It really comes down to a want to serve the community that you live in. And that's who we hire, people that want to help. It is difficult in today's times, you know, with some of the controversy going on, but cops are good people. They want to help people.
Yeah, it's a difficult job. So let's say theoretically that your mayor was not spending his time in CNN studios and he was back in South Bend and you had a chance to speak to him directly about this, what would you say?
I would tell him that he needs to recuse himself from this investigation. He has used this incident to further his political campaign, and he cannot be unbiased about this.
So it's so reckless and wrong. Harvey Mills, thank you very much for that update from South Bend. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Tucker. I would like to mention, if you don't mind, we had started a GoFundMe page to help support Officer O'Neill. However, GoFundMe allows Antifa to raise money on their site, but they have taken down our site, stating that Officer O'Neill has been accused of a hate crime, which is completely untrue. We have started a new
GoFundMe did that?
Yes, GoFundMe. Yes. We've started a new campaign. It's on Fundly, FUNDLY.com. You can search for helpryanO'Neill.com or help Ryan O'Neill, defend Ryan O'Neill.
Yeah, well, that's amazing. I didn't know that. I didn't know GoFundMe did that.
Yes,
maybe they'll explain
we had
themselves.
already raised over $5,000.
Maybe someday they'll be punished for it. Good.
Yep.
God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Great to see you tonight. Harvey Mills. Well, the president's visit to the DMZ possibly has revived peace efforts in the region. It could save American lives. Democrats are outraged, though. The neocons are in charge of that party, and they're mad. I'll tell you more as we continue our broadcast live from South Korea. Welcome back, coming to you live from the North Korean border. As we've chronicled during our recent series about homelessness on the West Coast, massive encampments of vagrants are filling entire neighborhoods in cities across the West: San Francisco, Seattle, Eugene, Oregon, obviously Portland. Garbage, needles, human waste piling up. In Los Angeles, typhus has returned. Typhus. It's medieval. It's a disaster, but it's not inevitable. We're in Seoul, right outside Seoul now. We were just in Tokyo. That's literally the world's biggest city. Virtually nobody is homeless. 2,000 people in a city of 30 million metro, something like that. No graffiti. Why is that exactly? Why are the cities in Asia so much cleaner, so much better run, so much more functional than our cities? It's an obvious question that nobody seems to ask ever. So we asked it of the president during our recent interview. He conceded that the problem exists and he'd like to do something about it. Here it went.
You can't have what's happening where police officers are getting sick just by walking the beat. I mean, they're getting actually very sick. Where people are getting sick, where the people living there are living in hell, too. We cannot ruin our cities. And you have people that work in those cities. They work in office buildings, and to get into the building, they have to walk through a scene that nobody would have believed possible 3 years ago. And this is the liberal establishment. This is what I'm fighting.
The press mocked that over on MSNBC. Jeb Bush's idiotic former spokesman. Oh, that's so absurd. Really? Have you been outside recently? Here's how the Washington Post responded to it. What homeless crisis, they said. Seriously. A headline last night on the Post reads this, quote, Trump paints a dark picture of homelessness in cities. Really? Have you walked outdoors? As the Post lectured you, your eyes are lying. Those massive tent encampments destroying our greatest cities, authorities doing nothing, that's not real. There's not really a homeless problem. Homeless numbers are down, they told us. Trump's dark picture, it's just a right-wing fever dream. He's senile. He's a hater. Here's something interesting, though. Just a few months ago, that very same newspaper, the Washington Post, had a very different view. In March, the Post wrote that, quote, the significant growth in tent encampments nationwide has become one of the most visible signs of the nation's failure to alleviate widening inequality. In that same piece, the newspaper admitted that tent camp cleanups have nearly quadrupled in Washington, D.C. in just the past 4 years. In another piece in March, the Post said that burgeoning tent cities, quote, symbolize the depth of the nation's affordable housing crisis and inability to solve its homelessness problem. So what happened? Did some miracle occur in the last 3 months that changed all of this? that eliminated homelessness and made it a joke to the Washington Post and Jeb Bush's former flack over at MSNBC? What changed? Well, the press changed. So Trump comes out for something, and suddenly they're against it. It doesn't matter what it is. It could be open borders. It could be Antifa, falling wages. Doesn't matter. If the president notices a crisis, they decide it no longer exists. Who's the marionette? Who's the buffoon? I think you know. Well, it's too early to tell right now, but the president's visit to the DMZ in North Korea could eventually be seen as a historic moment, a turning point in his presidency. We don't know, but it was amazing. Either way, his meeting with Kim Jong-un seems to have restarted the peace process with North Korea, and it could, at some point, lead to some kind of resolution. That would clearly be a good thing. No matter how odious North Korea is, and its leader is, clearly he is. But back in the United States, the president is being denounced by the left and the press. They're indistinguishable. Here's some of the denunciations.
Just the idea that it doesn't mean anything to anyone is an apt parallel.
With North Korea, Donald Trump has no strategy, and he hasn't brought the American people to this moment where we can embrace what we saw this weekend.
This is not a great man, and Donald Trump seems to think he's the bee's knees.
Can you imagine President Obama or Bush going and doing a visit like we just saw, like we just showed on our screens here, without getting something in return?
No, not at all. And that's really the problem, Ari.
Whether it's Putin, whether it's North Korea, evangelical Christians, white conservatives in America have pretty much decided for the last 3 years that anything Donald Trump does is okay.
This is a disgrace, an absolute, total, abject disgrace. The flag of the United States is flying on par with the flag of North Korea.
We got to stop playing clips of these people. They're such losers. Ugh. David Dufury is an attorney and former foreign policy advisor to Barack Obama, and he joins us tonight. David, thanks a lot for coming on. So the idea that Kim Jong-un, obviously a loathsome person, I don't think anybody would disagree with that. But the idea that he's such a bad person that you shouldn't meet with him, like, when did this become a serious idea? I've heard people say that in the last 24 hours.
Well, we all agree that he's a loathsome person. You just said it. We also all want the same thing, which is we want North Korea not to have nuclear weapons and for it to rejoin the international community. The problem is that not that Trump is meeting with him, because the first time Trump met with him, some of the same people that you just showed were actually happy about it and actually gave him some compliments on his accomplishing that. He met with him a second time and didn't accomplish anything in that meeting. And now this is the third meeting. Now go back to the first meeting, which happened in Singapore. Remember that they signed an agreement, and Kim Jong-un signed that he was going to denuclearize the Korean peninsula. That was over a year ago, and yet Kim Jong-un has taken no steps to denuclearize. In fact, we're probably less safe because Kim Jong-un has continued with missile tests, short-range missile tests, but that's improving his nuclear arsenal. So that's the big problem here. It's not that he did one meeting. It's that he's now done a third meeting with no accomplishments, and it is normalizing
that makes us, all right, it's all so dumb, it's kind of hard. I'm fighting through the thicket of absurdity here. Look, Trump, whatever his faults, did not give nuclear weapons to North Korea. Those were developed under the previous administration, right? Under the sainted Barack Obama administration. Nobody said anything about it, okay?
Actually, so way before that. It happened way before Obama.
He walks into a bad situation. There's almost no understanding what's happening in North Korea. We don't even know how old the North Korean leader is. We know virtually nothing about the country. So tell me how meeting with him weakens our hand and makes us a more dangerous situation. That's just not a plausible claim. I'm sorry, it's not. I'm not saying it solves it. It doesn't make it worse, though.
It's a great photo op for Kim Jong-un to stand next to the leader of the free world, the president of the United States. That makes him look good. It makes him look normal. No other president gave him that benefit. Now, it's okay for Trump to do that if Trump is getting something. But if Trump is getting something in return, and he's not. Go ahead.
Okay, but we don't know if he is or not. But we know it's probably, just common sense would tell you, it's less likely that he's going to lob a missile into Seoul after yesterday's meeting. And honestly, just give it to me quick, because I really want to know. How does this strengthen his hand? He's an unchallenged dictator who murders any opposition. He's not a democratically elected leader. He's not playing to a constituency of millions. I don't understand your point, honestly.
Well, the idea that he's less likely to engage in violence is not true. Remember, he killed his own uncle and his half-brother. He had great relationships with them. They were his family members, after all. But when it came down to it, when he decided his own survival and his regime's survival depended on killing his own family members, he did it without any qualms. So Trump's idea that having a relationship with Kim Jong-un is going to somehow result in Kim Jong-un not attacking us, it's not right. Kim Jong-un does not give a rat's ass about a relationship with President Trump. What he cares about is surviving and making his regime survive. So the president has to be more strong and demand something in return when he's going to meet with Kim Jong-un. And that's the point.
It has to be more strong. Right. That's always the neocon refrain. Unless you're bombing, it's not working. I get it. It has to be more strong. Not enough Americans are dying. All right. I get it. David, thank you.
Thanks, Tucker.
On Monday, young pioneer Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez visited another one of America's overwhelmed migrant holding facilities. She left and immediately started lecturing, as is her habit, another militant condemnation of the people who are trying to keep our border safe. Watch.
There's abuse in these facilities. There's abuse. This was them on their best behavior, and they put them in a room with no running water, and these women were being told by CBP officers to drink out of the toilet. They were drinking water out of the toilet, and that was them knowing a congressional visit was coming.
Man, I thought I talked a lot. That woman can't stop talking. It's interesting. Is any of it true? Doesn't sound like it. The Border Patrol completely denies everything she said. Well, some accuse Ocasio-Cortez of screaming at officials there. Is that true? We don't know. All of this is certainly influencing the Democratic Party, though. She seems to be in charge. I guess it's just the loudest, most aggressive person in a party as weak as the Democratic Party. Cory Booker just released an immigration plan whose tenets include immediately releasing virtually everyone here illegally who's crossed the border. In other words, de facto open borders. Democrats, meanwhile, blame America for the border crisis. Even Latin American officials are not joining in. It's too dumb. The president of El Salvador says that actually recent drowning deaths in the Rio Grande River are his country's fault, not America's. Tammy Bruce is the president of Independent Women's Voice and hosts Get Tammy Bruce, which we should, on Fox Nation, and she joins us tonight. So, Tammy, you have the president of El Salvador coming out and taking America's side, in effect, over Cory Booker, who's attacking America. What are we to make of this?
Well, we're to make of this that one person has the best interests of his people and of the region in mind, and that's not Cory Booker. You know, there's a big difference here. And what's interesting, of course, I mean, it's pretty blatant, whether it be the debates or all of their immigration plan. They deny it. They realize there was some damage after the debates, but it really is decriminalizing crossing the border, eliminating, these facilities, which means open borders. And they're looking for that because the more people you have in a state, the higher your representation is in the House of Representatives. It is a cold-blooded calculation for political power. And these very individuals that they say they care about, these migrants coming over who are looking for a better life, who are fleeing a lawless, a horrible dynamic, as they claim and as their supporters claim, are entering into that environment being created here for them by the Democrats. So you've got a remarkable dynamic, including with Ms. Ocasio-Cortez. Now they're being used as props. They're being used to win the news cycle, which was a big Barack Obama theory, right? No matter what's going on, you just win the next news cycle and people will move on. Well, the Democrats have had a bad few weeks. The debates were just awful. The president is making not only international news, but he's changing the world. And so what do? They're using these poor individuals as props for them to get more political power and to win a news cycle. Every day that goes on, Tucker, the Democrats lose more, and the President of the United States becomes more apparent that he's the man who's making this nation better.
I'm starting to think you're right about them losing. I really am. Tammy Bruce, great to see you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. By the way, one thing that's obvious, you know, for years we've been told that the most important thing to teach kids is self-esteem, not knowledge, but feeling good about themselves. What do you get when you actually do that for a generation? Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Often wrong, always self-confident. She's the living embodiment of the self-esteem program. Well, coming up next, it took years, but the Betsy Ross flag is now racist. That's what Nike says. That's next as we continue our broadcast live from the DMZ in South Korea. Welcome back. We're still in Asia, our last day on this fascinating continent here at the DMZ. Fox has obtained brand new surveillance footage of Jussie Smollett on the night he faked a hate crime against himself. Fox's Matt Finn in Chicago has been on the story since the very first day. We're happy to have him on tonight for an update. Hey, Matt.
Tucker, thanks for having me. Fox News obtained this video via a Freedom of Information request, and really what it does for the first time is very much appear to show Jussie Smollett and the Osundayo brothers at the alleged scene of the crime the night it happened. A first piece of video shows the Osundayo brothers walking towards the direction of Smollett's apartment building. Chicago police and the brothers' attorney tell us the video is the brothers, and in it you can clearly see a flash of a red-brimmed hat. Police notes, which we reviewed, and surveillance video appears to show one of the brothers purchasing a red-brimmed hat along with other items like a white rope to be used during the alleged hoax. Also, the new video shows Smollett walking in the middle of the street in the same white sweater he was later seen wearing when police arrived. And you could see on the video it was such a frigid night here in Chicago. There's hardly any other human in sight other than what appears to be Smollett and the brothers. And another new piece of video from a loading dock appears to show Smollett in that same white sweater, looking calm, perhaps a cell phone in hand. And then what also appears to be, but not certain, the Osundayo brothers seen walking down the same sidewalk. The timing on that, not clear. We reached out to Smollett's legal team for comment on this new video. We have not heard back. So far, Smollett and his attorneys maintain that he was the true victim of a hate crime and had nothing to do with the hoax. Tucker.
Matt Finn from Chicago tonight. Thank you. Well, it seems like every week the list of things the left finds offensive and racist expands. It will keep expanding because ultimately what the left despises most is America, its people, and its history. That's obvious. It's becoming more obvious every day. This week, Nike was set to roll out a patriotic sneaker based on the original Betsy Ross 13-star American flag, but then recalled that sneaker at the last minute. Why? Because celebrity moron activist Colin Kaepernick said the flag is racist somehow. Okay, because it was flown during a time when slavery existed. Robert Woodson is founder of the Woodson Institute, and he joins us tonight. Mr. Woodson, thank you very much for coming on.
Pleased
so what's the message here? The early American flag, the Betsy Ross flag, is a hate symbol. What does that tell you about their view of America?
Well, first of all, let me give you a little setup here. I really think it's another hoax going on. In my suburban community, there was a shoplifting trio that operated. One was a black guy dressed in a sweatsuit, and the other a well-dressed white couple. And they would go into an upscale clothing store, and he would act very suspiciously, and that would draw the security, and they would go behind the screen and steal everything, and they would meet in the parking lot and divide up the goodies. That's what we have going on here with Nike. A 31-year-old pampered, wealthy athlete can pick up the phone and be the arbiter for Black America to tell Nike to cancel. I think this was a setup from the beginning to sell. But what this is happening, though, he's denigrating a symbol that is very important to many African Americans, and he's denigrating this country. Black Americans fought in every war in this country, and they fought bravely because they fought for the promise that was America. But they were also where America had a problem. The problem was slavery and discrimination and racism. But what held them together and caused it, because they defended, because America was promised, was outweighed the problems, and it was self-correcting. We had a system to self-correct. And so for him to take this, denigrate the flag, is very disrespectful to the memory of the sacrifices made by the Tuskegee Airmen. about the triple nickel, who were the paratroopers, and all the other, the 92nd Combat Unit. And so I just think that Smallwood, he really does, Kaepernick does a tremendous disservice to this country. He's plunging us into a chaotic differences where we're fighting one another. In the meantime, the people in whose name he says he's doing this, low-income blacks, they are the ones suffering most, because as long as we're concentrated and transfixed on race, we will not address the problem of violence, of crime, of displacement due to all the other problems. And what is the answer?
And big companies like Nike bleeding our country dry. No, you're absolutely right. It's a scam from which only Nike is benefiting. And I was not clever enough to figure that out, but you're exactly right. Bob Woodson, great to see you tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, it seems inevitable at this point that America will legalize marijuana nationwide at some point, probably soon. The question is, will this help ordinary people or just those who own cannabis corporations? I'll let you meditate on that until we return in just a moment. Facebook's a big company. It's got a lot of different missions, spying on you, getting you addicted to digital mindlessness, and also pushing abortion. Facebook has repeatedly blocked pro-life ads for being sensational and graphic. In Ireland, they censored a pro-life ad simply for showing an unborn child. They said the image was too offensive. So it's unsurprising to learn that the COO of Facebook, Sheryl Sandberg, has just donated $1 million to the Planned Parenthood Action Fund. Sandberg says she's motivated by, quote, draconian laws against abortion recently passed in Alabama, Georgia, and other states. She says the laws are a threat to, quote, women of color. She doesn't explain, but Facebook's view on this is very clear, and so is hers. She's articulated it many times. Children get in the way of corporate profits, of the bottom line. If you have a family, you're much more likely to be loyal to other people than you are to be loyal to the company you work for. In other words, to Sheryl Sandberg. So abortion is actually a huge boon to her and to shareholders. Is there a creepier motivation? See if you can think of one. Probably isn't. Well, supporters of marijuana legalization claim that marijuana is really the new frontier in civil rights. Legalizing it, they tell us, will help America's poorest and most vulnerable. The health hazards of marijuana don't exist, they tell us, and selling it will allow former drug dealers to become thriving entrepreneurs. In other words, it's all good. Relax, man. Well, Dr. Kevin Sabet was a senior advisor at the Office for National Drug Control Policy under President Obama. He's no kind of right-winger. He's also president of Smart Approaches to Marijuana. He's not for putting people behind bars for having a joint. But in a recent op-ed, he warns that the risks of using marijuana are absolutely real, and they're being downplayed in order to further enrich multinational corporations. We just spoke to Sabet about this, and here's what he said. So the argument, at least the public argument about marijuana legalization, has really existed within a pretty narrow framework of rights and the positive social effect of legalizing it. You point out that this is also a business push here.
It's a huge business push, and it's backed by Big Tobacco, actually, which is ironic that some of the staunchest opponents of Big Tobacco for the last 50 years are supporting pot. It makes no sense. Big Tobacco, Big Alcohol, Big Pharma, they're all in on pot. It's about a couple of these guys making a lot of money. And the idea that some kid from the Bronx or somebody that doesn't have the banking connections, the political connections, is going to somehow compete with, Philip Morris and R.J. Reynolds is laughable, to say the least.
So would you say, and can you, is it true, is it provably true, that these big companies are funding what appear to be grassroots efforts, support of legalized marijuana?
Well, absolutely. They're funding all these different political action committees. They're funding all this lobbyists on the federal level as well as the state level. What's interesting, though, is that they don't always win. I mean, in New York, just last week, we had a big victory driven by the PTA, the Medical Society, law enforcement. We were outspent 20-1, but we defeated them. It's harder to win in the ballot, sort of these ballot committees where you have propositions and initiatives, because with those you have to, have $10 million to even run one commercial. But with these legislative decisions like New York, when people listen, Democrats and Republicans, they realize that today's pot is way more harmful than it used to be. It's not the 60s weed, and it's being driven by basically a few guys that want to get rich, and they don't like that.
Interesting. So the health effects of marijuana, are to some extent unknown. There hasn't been that much longitudinal study of this. We don't really know, but to the extent we do know, some of the findings are ominous. Are these companies not worried about the liability involved?
Well, they should be. Actually, we're even assembling legal experts as we speak to look at this because I think in 10, 20, 30 years, you're going to have these lawsuits. I mean, we had the lawsuits for big tobacco. Currently, we have the lawsuits for the opioid manufacturers, and rightly so. We're going to have the lawsuits. I give it 10 years. We're going to have the mass lawsuits against big marijuana. And I think it's kind of investors beware. By the way, we know more, Tucker, about marijuana than a lot of people think we do. We actually, the National Academy of Sciences published a year ago a 400-page plus report talking about mental illness, psychosis, schizophrenia, the developing brain, the driving hazards, memory. This is not something that we want to be promoting in society at all, especially today's gummy bears, cookies, candies, these waxes. It's nothing to do with the Woodstock weed.
Nobody thinks that people should go to prison for having a joint. Okay?
No.
But there's got to be some middle ground between not being insanely punitive and making it really easy for kids to have marijuana products with 85% THC, which is like demented.
No, you're 100% right. That's why Patrick Kennedy, Ted Kennedy's son, and I founded SAM, Smart Approaches to Marijuana, as a way to say, let's not go to the extreme. I don't want to be putting kids in prison for pot. By the way, I don't know any cops that want to do that either. I've never met one cop that wants to do that. We don't want to give people criminal records. But you don't have to go to the other extreme and open up, 10 pot shops on one block selling 99% gummies and this wax stuff that you vaporize and that, blows your brain out. It's ridiculous that you need to have
these
exactly
extremes.
Right. Yeah.
Thank you for being a voice of sanity in this. I appreciate it. Thank you, Doctor.
Ryan. Thanks so much, Tucker.
Well, they're invulnerable to heat, cold, radiation, poison, maybe even death itself. A new breed of invincible insects cropping up all over the world. Not making this up. Is there a hope of stopping them? That's next as we finish our final show here in East Asia. Be right back. Welcome back to South Korea. They can't be stopped. They spread inexorably. They are invincible. They're not zombie raccoons. They are cockroaches, the terminator of the insect world. They're already resistant to radiation. That is true, by the way, and hard to squish with your foot. A new study by Purdue University finds that a common German cockroach species is now being born with immunity to common bug spray toxins. Think through the implications of that. As these immunities spread throughout the cockroach community, researchers say the bugs will be, quote, almost impossible to stop. Brett Larson was concerned enough about this to take a break from his day job at Fox News Headlines 24/7 and investigate for us tonight. He joins us now. Brett, is this as scary as it sounds?
This is a very troubling revelation that we got out of here, Purdue University. And the old saying goes, when Armageddon comes, the only thing that's going to be left are the cockroaches and Cher. And they proved this in this new study. This is actually kind of interesting because when you dig below the surface on this, there are several hundred species of bugs and mites and spiders that in time and through their evolution become impervious to these pesticides. And as it is now, when the Orkin man shows up, if you've got a problem with these cockroaches, they're using several different types of chemicals to kill these things. Well, it turns out they have a very quick gestation period. They have about a 100-day life cycle. So when the survival of the fittest steps in, if it's, you know, you can literally spray it with Raid and it survives and goes on to have several hundred offspring, then you can see where this is going. It's complete Darwinism, and it's kind of terrifying because now they're saying, how are we going to deal with this if nothing we can do, if none of these chemicals that we've been using are going to kill these you know, they're roaches. They're very troublesome things. If you've ever come across one, they're disgusting and they're unkillable.
They're disgusting.
They're going to have to come up with these somewhat seemingly arcane ways of killing cockroaches, including, I read in one report, they're going to have to start vacuuming them up because that's the only way they're going to get them. They're not going to be able to kill them because, as you mentioned off the top, you can't kill them with radiation. They'll survive anything. They'll probably survive a Cher concert.
I watched one of my producers yesterday eat a silkworm and said it was delicious. So, I mean, maybe their culinary opportunities were overlooking him. Well, I hope you'll get back to us on
maybe
that.
They're
Brett Larson, good to see you.
All right, thanks, Tucker. Have a good one.
Maybe they are. Well, today, by the way, is World UFO Day. It's World UFO Day. Enthusiasts around the world swapping photos, videos, stories, wondering what might be out there and whether we'll soon learn the truth about whether there's life in our solar system and beyond. It's a question the government has spent millions of dollars and many years investigating. During our interview with the president last week, we asked him about those investigations and what they have found. We'll bring you his answer to that question later in the week. Stay tuned. Well, that wraps it up. 7 live shows in a row from here in Asia. We're headed back to the United States. But first, a big thank you to our team here on the ground in South Korea. Our amazing translator, Sarah Moon, and driver, Mr. Kim, were critical. They helped us every step of the way. Our A-list technical team, really the best, made every show from Japan and North Korean border flawless. Benjamin West, Kyle Rothenberg, 2 of our absolute favorites, and of course, Charlie Cougar and Justin Wells, our producers. We're going to be back very soon. In the meantime, 8 p.m. every night, the show that's the sworn enemy of lying, pomposity, smugness, and groupthink. Good night from the border with North Korea. Have the best 4th of July. Hannity is next.